No memoir rollout, no tell-all tour, just a 94-year-old legend deciding it's time to put a few things on the record. Angie Dickinson has begun speaking about the turns that made her, the roles that changed television, and the private history she kept mostly to herself. The version people think they know, feathers and fringe, a dazzling smile, a cop who could outthink any crook, was real. But the road to that image wound through small-town quiet, hard choices and loyalties that didn't fit into neat Hollywood anecdotes. What she's sharing now isn't scandal. It's texture, how the work happened, what it cost, and why some stories had to wait. She started far from studio lots. Born Angeline Brown on September 30th, 1931, in Minot, North Dakota, she grew up in a German-American household where discipline and modesty were the default. When her family moved to California, she did the practical thing and worked as a secretary after graduating from Immaculate Heart College. A local pageant nudged her into modeling. Modeling opened a door to acting. Casting directors noticed the steadiness behind the beauty, her timing, her ease under pressure, the intelligence in her stillness. It wasn't a fluke. Once the camera found her, it didn't look away. The break that changed everything arrived in 1959 with Howard Hawks's Rio Bravo. In a film anchored by John Wayne and Dean Martin, Dickinson's feathers, sly, warm, unflappable, stole scenes without forcing them. Audiences clocked it. She wasn't window dressing. Over the next years, she hopped genres like a pro. Ocean's 11, 1960. The Killers, 1964. Point Blank, 1967. Each performance adding another proof point. What set her apart wasn't just charisma, but control. She could play flirtation without surrender, threat without bluster, a woman who surveyed a room and knew exactly where she stood. Then came the role that turned a career into a marker. In 1974, Dickinson headlined Police Woman as Sergeant Pepper Anderson. Female-led crime shows were rare. Credible ones were rarer. She gave the character style, humor, authority, and a refusal to be patronized, and viewers responded. Week after week, people saw a woman lead not by imitation, but by presence. The show made her a symbol of competence, of independence, of possibility, and earned her a Golden Globe. It also helped change what television thought it could sell. Not just a woman in uniform, but a woman in charge. The later filmography showed the same range. She brought nerve and nuance to Brian De Palma's Dressed to Kill, 1980, slipped into the gnarlier edges of prestige TV with Wild Palms, 1993, and showed quiet gravity in Pay It Forward, 2000. There were surprises, too. In 1982, she sang on Perry Como's ABC Christmas special, then again in 1986, rare detours for someone known for composed fire, not torch songs. Years later, in a chat with Larry King while she was appearing in the series Duet, she noted that those Como specials were the only times she ever sang on camera. They landed like little hidden gems in a career already full of them. The late 80s were lively. In 1987, she revisited Wilma McClatchy in Big Bad Mama 2, reclaiming the character's reckless charm. That year, she also teamed with Telly Savalas for the TV movie Kojak: Fatal Flaw, their rapport snapping back into place as if it had been stored on a hanger between takes. In 1988, she joined Willie Nelson for the ensemble western Once Upon a Texas Train, grounding the TV romp with her usual blend of clarity and warmth. The pattern across formats was consistent. Whatever the budget or medium, Dickinson's center of gravity made stories hold. Off-screen, the personal story threaded through its own chapters. She married football standout Gene Dickinson in 1952. They separated in 1956 and divorced in 1960, but she kept his surname, a practical decision once Angie Dickinson started to mean something professionally. Those years also brought an unexpected friendship with economist John Kenneth Galbraith and his wife Catherine. She traveled to India while he served as U.S. ambassador, a detail he later noted in his memoirs with amused affection. The image of a rising Hollywood actor at diplomatic dinners says something simple. She navigated more than one world with ease. In 1965, she married composer Burt Bacharach, whose melodies defined a generation. The marriage lasted 16 years and weathered the usual pressure points. 2 high-profile careers, long absences, the frictions of ambition. They separated for a time and dated other people before the end. The axis of that life was their daughter Nikki, born prematurely in 1966 and later diagnosed as autistic. Dickinson shifted priorities to advocate and care, protecting her child in a culture that then lacked language and support. Nikki died by suicide in 2007, a loss Dickinson has spoken about with plain, unsentimental grief. Bacharach's death in 2023 closed the book on a bond that had been brilliant, strained, and permanent in the way families are, even when they change shape. Love returned in other forms. In the 1980s, she dated musician Billy Vera, appearing in the video for his hit I Can Take Care of Myself, a pairing that felt like 2 eras enjoying each other. In the 1990s, she spent several years with broadcaster Larry King, an unlikely match on paper that worked in practice, his caffeinated curiosity balanced by her poise and amused candor. She has never pretended these chapters were more or less than what they were. Good seasons, instructive seasons, and sometimes both. In 2023, she said aloud what some had long guessed. She'd had a 2-decade on and off relationship with Frank Sinatra. She described him as the love of her life. That phrasing, so direct, didn't romanticize the mess or minimize the magnetism. It simply placed him accurately in her story. Sinatra's capacity to command a room is legend. Dickinson's account adds the human dimension, the private gravity that outlasts headlines. The admission doesn't rewrite her history. It annotates it, showing how complexity can be held without apology. The disclosures didn't stop with lovers and friends. For years, fans and reporters traded half-stories about her encounters with comedy's icons. Only now is she talking carefully about Redd Foxx. The comedian behind Sanford and Son built a career on snapback wit, a smirk that could slice, and a work ethic that let him stand in a spotlight that can steam as much as it glows. Dickinson's portrait isn't gossip, it's an accounting. He was hilarious, she says, and he was hurting. Both statements can be true. She wants people to see the whole person, not the distilled persona audiences mistake for the entirety of a life. Part of why her perspective matters is context. Dickinson came up in a male-dominated industry that often flattened women into types and smoothed men into myths. She recognized the flattening because she lived through it. Where others saw Fox's punchlines, she saw the weight behind them, the fatigue, the fights audiences never saw, the costs comedians often pay to be the pressure valve for everyone else's day. When you meet someone like Redd, she says now, you can't ignore the layers beneath the laughter. It's not absolution, it's recognition. Great performers are rarely simple people. She's quick to stress that her connection with Foxx wasn't romantic. It was professional and human, a steady exchange of respect on sets and stages where he could flip from riff to reflection in a breath. One minute he had Cruise doubled over. The next, he'd drop a clean sentence that made the room go quiet. At first, the pivot felt jarring. Soon, she came to admire it. That duality, elasticity, really, is part of what made him special. It also made him vulnerable in a business that rewards consistency even when life refuses to be consistent. At this age, she has little interest in varnish. There's a freedom in being this age, she says with a half laugh. Truth matters more than image maintenance. She talks about aging without euphemism, about loss without melodrama, and about memory with gratitude and limits. Some things are worth protecting, some are worth finally saying out loud. The way she speaks about Fox carries both impulses, protecting his dignity while insisting on his complexity. She wants him remembered not as a caricature but as a full person who created joy while carrying his own burdens. Pull back, and a theme emerges. Angie Dickinson's career is a ledger of firsts and proofs: how to be taken seriously in a frame built for men, how to lead a network drama without apologizing for it, how to move between film and television without treating one as a demotion. The public loved the sparkle. The pros loved the competence. She was always prepared. She hit her marks. She knew when to underplay. That professionalism earned her the power to pick and choose, to stop chasing fads, to find work that matched her temperature rather than pretend to be someone else's idea of current. Her personal life reads the same way: pragmatic, sometimes bruising, always forward. She chose to keep a married name because it served the work. She stood by a child who needed her full attention rather than outsource motherhood to convenience. She honored a long, complicated love with Sinatra by naming it plainly. She allowed two public-facing relationships to be what they were without building myth around them. And she extended generosity to Galbraith's family, to old colleagues, to younger women who saw policewoman and felt a door open where a wall had been. That's why the recent openness lands differently than a late-life confession. It's an artist putting liner notes on her own record, the footnotes that didn't fit into the talk show segments, the only ever TV singing on Perry Como's specials, the India trip tucked into a diplomat's diary, the exacting hours with Hawks, the careful calibration of Pepper Anderson's authority, add up to a portrait of someone who understood her instrument and protected it. She's not rewriting her legacy, she's clarifying it. The Redd Foxx chapter fits that project. In a culture that loves simple narratives, insisting on the whole person can feel radical. Dickinson's take asks fans to hold two ideas at once: genius and struggle, laughter and ache. It's a humane request, and it comes from someone who earned the right to make it. She knows how easy it is to be reduced to a role. Feathers, pepper, a glam close-up, just as she knows what it costs to keep showing up and doing the work well enough that the role becomes the standard. What remains after all these years is the steadiness. The performances hold. The trail she cut on television is still lit. The private kindnesses, favors done, calls returned, a young actor steadied, circulate in stories that rarely make print. And now, the stories she's chosen to tell herself add shading. She sang exactly twice on television, on Christmas. She loved enormously and imperfectly. She saw through sparkle to the person underneath. She protected what needed protecting and, at last, named what could be named. If you've got a favorite Angie Dickinson performance, or a memory of how Policewoman shifted your sense of what a lead could look like, I'd love to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if this filled in a few blanks, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories.